All right, thank you, everybody, for coming to City Council, Belvedere City Council Committee of the Whole meeting of August 28, 2023. If the clerk will help me out with a roll call, please.
Albertini,
Here.
Brereton is absent. Flurry,
Here.
Frank,
Here.
Freeman is absent. Gramkowski,
Here.
McGee,
Here.
Mulhall,
Here.
Porter is absent. Snow,
Here.
7 present.
Okay, thank you. And this evening, I have one individual registered for public comment, Mr. Derek Williams. Derek? Hi, how are you? Could you come up here, please? Welcome.
Thanks. So as he stated, my name's Derek Williams. A little bit about myself. I've grown up in this town my whole life. I'm now 36 years old. I just recently moved back to Belvedere, and I've been living at 1014 East 2nd Street. And throughout the course of a year that I've been there, there has been persistent and excessive speeding on that street going both ways, mainly westbound. The speeding at times gets to be maybe 45, 50 miles an hour. And on East 2nd in particular, there's not much activity in the front yards. Most people have backyards, and so it would appear as if you could drive faster down that road. It just got paved, and I think residents and maybe oftentimes not residents are using it as a jog or a shortcut to stay away from Logan, stoplights, traffic lights, things like that. And they're taking advantage of the freshly paved road and the opportunity to just take a straight shot without having to hit any traffic stops. So I'm here today to speak on the public safety issue concerning my street in particular. I also just had a son. He's 10 months old now. And my girlfriend has 3 kids. They're 8, 10, and 15. And we're outside all the time. Our community is always walking around, and there are some frequent offenders, if you will, a handful of them that are the 50-mile-an-hour drivers, just speed demons up and down the road. And it's every day at particular times. And I prepared some notes and stuff because I was quite nervous to speak today, but I forgot them because life is a little hectic at home. But essentially that's the issue at hand. And I've taken some steps which I was pleasantly surprised in how well my issue was received by Sandra and Chief Woody. And I was able to accomplish, we were able to accomplish getting the speed trap or a mobile speed unit up. And it seems to have mitigated the speeding, when they see it. But I would just like to do a little more and see if we can't mitigate the excessive frequent speeders that go up and down my street. And essentially that's all I have to really speak on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams. And I will say that is a frustrating. That is frustrating when you see that either you have streets that individuals think they can take a shortcut, and they try and do that for whatever reason, and then habitually they certainly disregard the speed limit, and it does make it a concern for everyone who has children. And not to cut you off, but like I said, I've grown up here my whole life, and that's 36 years. 30 years ago, traffic, the amount of people, the type of people, Belvedere has changed quite a bit. And I can't ever remember a time where there's been so much traffic. Which is, it would make sense to try to take a shortcut in your daily trip.
But I don't want to waste anybody's time, and I understand how valuable resources are. With that being said, I know State Street is an absolute nightmare. I mean, all of a sudden, 30 years later, it seems like the flow of traffic is about 45 miles an hour. So I understand you guys are busy, but, you know, and I don't mean to be selfish, but in my street in particular, it seems to be quite dangerous. We got a church, a school, and it's just a persisting issue, and I appreciate everybody's help.
Well, I appreciate you coming here this evening, and we will try and do something better to address it. And I certainly understand your feelings. Believe me, I have them as well. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Under public forum, we have item A, Community Law Enforcement Officer Grant Program Update. Amanda Meal? Hi. Welcome. Sure.
And then here are 3 for you all. All right. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Mayor, thank you for having me, and members of the City Council. I'm Amanda Mail. I am the Public Health Administrator at the Boone County Health Department, but I also serve in the role of the Behavioral Health Task Force Chair. So I'm here to give just a brief presentation with some information about our core program, and more specifically to address some of the successes, the program successes related to our community law enforcement officer, so Officer Michelle Schwartz. And you are stuck with me this evening because Officer Schwartz and Jessica Perillo, who's the program manager for CORE, were invited to speak in Washington, D.C. So they are speaking on this particular program. It's gained national recognition, and they're actually going to participate in some training for other rural communities across the country. So I wanted to make sure that this council is aware that we're extremely proud of them. They're speaking in DC tomorrow on behalf of our community and on behalf of the Community Law Enforcement Officer Program. So we can move to the next slide. So the task force was formed in 2017 specifically to address the opioid crisis. It was a very opioid-specific program, but has since expanded to include the umbrella terminology of behavioral health, which we consider to be substance use disorder and then also mental health. Some people struggle with both, so we would call that co-occurring disorder. So our program addresses all of those needs, and our CLEO, our Community Law Enforcement Officer, is pretty integral in that. So we have grown from a task force with no grant funding and no staff to $2.6 million in federal award money and a staff of 8, one of which is our police officer. Next slide. And CORE stands for Community Outreach, Advocacy, and Recovery. And I am not going to get into the minutia of this slide because it is acronym fatigue, but I wanted to include it so that if you all had questions about specific grants that we operate and manage as a task force, what things stand for, when they were formed, why they're in place, this sort of helps to answer some of those questions. The other thing I would direct you to is the timeline on the back of the glossy sheet that I handed out, because it gives you a good visual as to where we've been since 2017, when grants were implemented, what quarter we're in, and what federal fiscal year we're in for the different grants. So hopefully that'll help clarify things. I will pass around my business card. If anybody wants to have a more in-depth conversation after this meeting and needs more clarification on any of our programs, be more than happy to speak with any of you to clarify kind of what we're doing and where we're headed with the programming. So I'll pass those around. We can move to the next slide. And then our task force is structured with bylaws and a voting order and a roster. We also have subcommittees. I do have Amy Gallino, who is the head of our Boone County Probation, but she's also the co-chair of the task force. She's here this evening to help answer any questions that might come up. And so the core team provides case management, access to care, and overall support to individuals in the community with mental health or substance use diagnosis. So again, we call that overarching term, we use behavioral health to describe that. So day-to-day duties include providing transportation, food, clothing, housing, and employment assistance, and links to healthcare or treatment facilities, with the goal of decreasing police contact, arrests, community tension, and barriers to care, while simultaneously increasing access to care, productivity in society, and engagement in resources. All right, and so the city council involvement really began in 2021 when we applied for the SORT grant, which is the grant that funds the subcontract with the city for our CLEO, our Community Law Enforcement Officer. And we applied and we were awarded that grant. And we worked with you all to develop an intergovernment agreement between Boone County Health Department, and the Belvedere Police Department in the city for the CLEO position. And we're able to approve that CLEO as a core team member. So one of the questions that came up in 2021 when we were negotiating that IGA and talking about the position was specific costs. What was the grant going to cover? What was the city going to cover? Was the city going to be responsible for covering anything? Was the grant going to cover the whole thing? Well, the intent with setting up the IGA was to organize it in such a way that the grant would cover the expenses. And we've had to make a couple of adjustments with the agreement that we have in order to be able to cover the salary of the officer that was hired. Because she's a more seasoned officer, she is more expensive than a rookie officer or a first-year officer, and so we have successfully been able to negotiate that. We will need to open that IGA back up to make sure that we can address areas in there where it might be boxing us into a particular salary price point, which really isn't beneficial if we have a seasoned officer in the position. But I am happy to say that the costs are being covered by the grant, and when we've had any issues with that, especially over the past 6 months or so, we've been able to work through those issues. So that seems to be going well, and I think we've learned how we can do that better going forward. So appreciate the mayor's office support with that, and also the support of the city council. So why is this program important? I just wanted to pull some information from the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. They completed a study surveying individuals with behavioral health diagnosis that were currently not in treatment. 40% of those individuals reported that they were not ready to stop using, and 60% reported that they were not in treatment due to a perceived barrier. So for example, not knowing where to go, not having health insurance, or not being able to afford it. So I just want us all to imagine if 60% of the individuals with behavioral health diagnoses were engaged and active in treatment, how much more successful and productive their lives would be, and how much less of a potential challenge it would be for the city and the county programs that interface with these individuals would lessen the amount of work that we put in to support them when they're able to be more self-sufficient and self-sustaining. Next slide. All right. So another question that we had in 2021 was, why is a police officer a necessary component of a team like CORE? Why would we need a law enforcement officer to be a part of that team? So one of the largest and most successful things that we've implemented over the last handful of years was the creation of the 900 badge number. So this is a badge number that is tied specifically to the CORE team. So this badge number gets tagged when a patrol officer comes in contact with an individual with a substance use or mental health concern, and then our CLEO is the lead on the 900 badge number, and she's able to use that to assign the appropriate team member and begin the process for the rest of the team. So some statistics related to that: the 900 badge number was tagged 361 times in the first year that the program was in place. And then this badge number is responsible at this point for more than 50% of the referrals that the CORE team receives. So I did ask Chief Woody just to speak briefly from his perspective in terms of how that badge number tagging system and how the CLEO is interfacing with his other officers and the benefits that he's seen over the last couple of years with this program.
Well, first of all, the tagging system came as a recommendation from Officer Schwartz and Jessica Perillo, because they were looking for a way to be able to track the statistics for the program. Because prior to that, essentially, Officer Schwartz would go out and she was handling a bunch of domestics, mental health cases, or opioid use calls for service. But they were having difficulty going back and being able to assess her productivity So early on, they came up with an idea to use the Code 900. We coordinated with the county, and ultimately, through the Sheriff's Department and dispatch, they came up with this 900 badge system. So whenever officers go to a call for service, either city or county, and they encounter a individual suffering from mental illness, a domestic that would benefit from receiving services from the CLEO, or an opioid use customer or client, they let dispatch know, code it 900. So then the next business day, Officer Schwartz can come in, query code 900, and then see all of the referrals that she has to follow up on, which are considerable. So then that allows her to then start prioritizing those calls for service and then addressing the most serious first. And just a very brief story, one that kind of sticks out to me, because we get, the command staff gets updates from our supervisors on patrol, and I remember them saying that they dealt with this one particular customer probably 20 times over a weekend, suffering from a mental illness, and all of a sudden had onset of symptoms for one reason or another, but started to become a call for service nightmare from a police department standpoint, because we respond there, and he's obviously suffering from a mental illness, but he's not a danger to himself or anybody else. So the services that we can provide from a law enforcement perspective are minimal, because either we convince somebody to get the services themselves voluntarily, which they're suffering from a mental illness, they're very rarely likely to do, or we have to have some sort of violation of law in order to have some sort of alternative method of dealing with this particular individual. Or third, and less, less desirable, they're a threat to themselves or somebody else. So absent one of those three situations, we go there, listen to what they have to say, try to intervene with whatever the complaint was that we received from, the community. And if we can, mitigate it, we try. But a lot of times we go there, talk to the person, and we don't have any choice but to leave. And they're not, at that particular point in time, willing to get the services that are available to them. And unfortunately, we've had officers spend hours talking to individuals like this with very little success of changing their mind to doing anything beneficial to themselves. Long story short, our supervisors put this in a weekend report, and of course they're going to log each of those as a 900, code 900, and Officer Schwartz was able to go there next business day and work her magic, and this individual decided to get services for themselves. Because of the connections that the program has established over the years, they're able to move mountains in terms of getting either beds or services for these individuals that need them from our community that normally aren't available to people that just come off the street. Yep. That's just one of the success stories that has made it, to my attention. I've talked informally with Officer Schwartz, and one of the other situations that we've noticed a remarkable success is through domestics. A lot of times, again, law enforcement, we go to a call for service involving individuals that are involved in some sort of domestic dispute. And if we're not able to establish that a battery has actually occurred to take law enforcement action or enforcement action, ultimately, we provide the person that we deem to be the victim of that domestic disturbance paperwork on how to obtain services. Now, for whatever reason, very few of those victims actually follow up with those services that are available to them, even though they have in writing, in print, what is there and what they have to do. Essentially, it's a calling, a phone number. But the ability for Officer Schwartz to go there and follow up with these individuals and explain the process, helps these people understand that maybe it's not quite as daunting as what it may seem like, because it can be very intimidating not knowing exactly what to expect. So, Officer Schwartz being able to explain the process to them, explain the resources, answer their questions, and take the time that maybe sometimes the patrol officers either can't or don't have to do that, either at all or effectively, possibly. For her to be able to do that and get these people the resources was the whole intent of this program. That's what we had hoped was going to happen. And unfortunately, besides some outside models, we didn't have, any tested data to present to you to justify, our request. But I would say over the last couple of years, they've been able to compile a significant amount of data to, justify having and dedicating an officer to this program. And one other thing, not to leave it out, because it's quite honestly the whole crux of the program, substance abuse. I mean, I can't tell you how many families have provided positive feedback for Officer Schwartz, for her ability to be able to get these individuals who are addicted to drugs into these different programs and get them on the path to recovery. Do some of them relapse? They do. But it's an ongoing process for some of these individuals, and she's just the first step. Ultimately, they've got to do the work, but she's able to help them navigate that process and at least take that first step to recovery, and she's been wildly successful in doing that.
For sure. Thanks, Chief. All right, so we'll go to the next slide. So another question that was asked, and the chief kind of just brought this up by all of you a handful of years ago, was like, how are we going to measure the program's success? How are we going to be able to track these things? How will we start to see that it's making some sort of an impact on the community? So I shared a few data points already, but I will just mention that last year, 231 individuals accepted our services of the ones that we reached out to. And you can see in the upper left-hand side, the Boone County Core Program opened cases has steadily been increasing over the last 8 quarters or so. There's a little bit of a dip halfway through. We had some staff turnover, and so when there's staff turnover and I have a vacant position, we aren't able to respond as quickly as we'd like to be able to respond to. And these are the other positions that wrap around Officer Schwartz's position. But we have been steadily increasing in terms of the open cases, and then of the follow-ups, 231 individuals have accepted our services. The other piece of information that I think is important to show, the different colors at the bottom of the graph. I know it's hard to see up here. I see some of you have the handouts in front of you, but the most important thing to show is when we first started the program, the orange was linking people or getting people into treatment, which was the overwhelming majority of the work that we were doing right off the bat. Because we've grown the team to 8 individuals, and because we have a law enforcement member of the team that's able to help handle some of the things that my behavioral health staff are not able to handle, we've been able to link people to things like medications, health insurance, employment, and basic needs such as housing or food. Because we can transfer somebody to a treatment program, they can go through a 30-day treatment program, and when they discharge, is there a home to go home to? How are they going to apply for jobs? How are they going to figure out how to be sustainable within society? So we're able to now take it one step further because we've grown the team and really get people into a situation where they're able to function in society and contribute to sort of the overall well-being of the community, which is ultimately what we want. We want people to be sustainable and be able to be on their own. Next slide. And then for community impact, police-led responder programs similar to the core model show a significant cost savings, quality adjusted life years, and overall societal costs. So in the upper left-hand corner, you can see that the orange bar was the overdose rate for Boone County, and the blue bar is the overdose rate for the state of Illinois. So our programs began in 2019, which is where the bars cross, and you can see that the Illinois rate is still quite a bit higher than the Boone County rate, which has been significantly decreasing since the implementation of the programs in 2019. And then also Boone County overdose calls for service by year. You can see that we've had a substantial decrease from 2021 to 2022. 23, oh, sorry, would you go back one slide? Okay, that's okay. 2023 is obviously not over yet, and that's a smaller bar, but we are trending at this time to come in under 2022. Hopefully we'll be able to continue that trend, but we have seen a decrease in Boone County calls for service by year. So next slide. So the future of CORE looks really bright. We continue to grow the program. We continue to receive the federal grant funding to continue all of our programs, which are so nicely listed on this timeline. Some of the things that we're starting to see that are emerging threats in the community is the huge change from what we used to see, which was opioid overdoses, to now almost all of our overdose situations are associated with fentanyl, and that's a much stronger substance, very hard to bring somebody back from, requires a lot of Narcan, and is extremely dangerous. And now we're starting to see xylazine, which is a tranquilizer used in veterinary medicine for large animals such as horses or cows. It's also being mixed in these super drugs that are now being synthetically adjusted and modified in labs and are being sold on the street. So we have some pretty heavy hitters that we're up against now as a community. And when I look at the data that we're seeing in terms of when we used to respond to what counted as an opioid overdose, it's been a fentanyl overdose pretty consistently, 95% of the cases for the last year and a half. And now we're starting to have providers report to us that they're starting to see very interesting symptoms that align with what would happen if a tranquilizer for the size of an animal such as a cow or a horse had been injected into a human body. So that's very scary, and that is on our streets, and that's something that our CORE program is going to be dealing with going forward. Next slide. So the other thing I wanted to mention too on your glossy page, this is our quarterly update that we've just started to put together. If you look on this side, in the bottom blue box, you can see our website, and I would encourage all of you, I gave you just a few data points, but we have a dashboard now which has all the data points you could ever want to read about, all the different programs, all the things that we're tracking quarter by quarter, and you can drop down the menu and kind of sort it by year. So I would encourage you to check out that website. And again, if you have questions or you'd like to meet with me further after tonight's meeting, I'd be happy to go over some of those data points with you. There's quite a bit there to delve into, and it was designed specifically to put the information out to local elected officials such as yourself, but also to the public. We want the community to know, hey, these programs are working. Here are the data points that we track. Here are the successes that we're seeing. Or on the reverse side, if something's trending in the wrong direction, then as a task force, we would be convening to discuss that. Look, we're starting to see xylazine circulating. We're seeing more fentanyl in, the heroin that people are using, right? And so if we can track our data and we can track those numbers, our 900 badge code can be tracked there for people to be able to see the successes of the program. So one final question that I know came up in 2021 that I did want to address is why families as individual family units aren't able to step up and assist their family members when they're struggling with a substance use disorder issue or they have a mental health challenge that they're facing. And I would just say that what I've seen over the years in this career is that these diseases do not know income barriers, they don't know racial barriers, they don't care what means your family has or what side of the railroad tracks your family lives on, and it impacts not only the individual but the whole family. I have a family member in my extended family who struggles with a mental health disorder, and I come from a family where we have enough food on the table and I make enough money to survive, and it's been hard. It's been hard to watch it happen. This family member does not live in this community, and they have not had access to these types of programs. So I am grateful that our community members here in Boone County and in Belvedere have the opportunity to now have access to these programs. I have all the power and privilege in the world, and I couldn't stop what was happening to this family member. So I'm very glad that they are getting the help they need, but they didn't have a program like this when they were first diagnosed. And with that, I have brought a guest speaker to share a little bit about her family's experience with this program, particularly here locally in Boone County, because it has touched her and her family. So I will introduce Julie Bliss, who is the county clerk.
Hi, Julie.
Mayor Morris, hello. I'm going to do my very best to get through this without crying, which I'm already starting. So, you all know me as Julie Bliss, right? You see my personality. You know how I am. You see me running elections. Most people who know me think, oh, she seems to handle everything under pressure, right? Well, this time, we're one of the statistics that Amanda referred to. My youngest daughter last year, she attempted suicide March 31st, 2022. And I have to tell you, thank you. Oh, thank you. No parent ever expects that to happen. And when you get home and your child calls you from her bedroom and says, Mom, I did something really bad. What did you do? She took over 50 ibuprofen pills. She had 3 extra strength ibuprofen that had been prescribed for a volleyball injury. She was a volleyball player. And where I found the strength to carry that child, who is my height, from her bedroom to the living room, I will never know. But we called 911 immediately. We spent the night in the ER. The next morning, we drove her to the Chicago Behavioral Health Hospital. And the reason we did that is because there was nothing here. There was nothing in Belvidere where she could go. There was nothing available in Rockford where she could go. The Swedes health systems had nothing available. They were full. So we took her in there, which was probably one of the darkest days I've ever had. To leave your child with people that you don't know and are expected to take care of her. And she was there for a week. Monday after this took place, April 4th, Officer Schwartz called me at work. And she said, we were not allowed to go to the hospital to visit her. So she said, this is the first time that I've been told that I needed to call somebody that I knew. And I said, I don't know what to do. I'm smart. I am educated. If I don't know something, I find the answer. I know who to call. I know what to find. This was not a situation that I could do that with. Had it not been for Officer Schwartz, I'm still not quite sure where we would have ended up. She was so helpful and so patient and so calming. She listened to everything. She listened to me cry. She listened to me, like, just with all these confused things and being angry that there was no other resource nearby. Well, she said there is. There's just not things that we actually knew about. She put us in touch with Youth Services Network, who actually sent somebody to our home on as much as we needed in the beginning. About once a week, she came for about 3 months. And the reason why that was so helpful to us is because there were no other resources for us to get her into a psychiatrist or a therapist for months. The waiting lists were unbelievable. My child needs help now. She needs help right now. Who can help us with that? So Michelle helped us with that. She brought the services in for us. From there, she was diagnosed with PTSD related to incidents with her father. Her father is an abusive alcoholic meth addict who, thank goodness, does not live in this state any longer. But because we had this now, I took it to Michelle and I said, what can I do with this? How can I prevent him from being a part of her life and causing any more kind of damage that's already been done? And so she helped me. You had mentioned earlier about some of the services that she did in getting people the right avenues to go in, and that's what she did. She helped me to determine what paperwork I needed, that I ended up being able to go to court and getting a 2-year order against him where he can't come anywhere near my minor children that are still at home. I have a senior and Olivia's now a sophomore. It was, when you're going through that at the time, you're exhausted because you don't sleep. You are scared, you're terrified, and even for those of us who are used to being calm and quick-paced in crazy situations, this is not one of those that you can be rational about. So to be able to have someone there that could put that in for you, that could be your connection to rational, that's what Michelle did for us, for me especially. I can't say enough about this. I am such a fan of this program and Officer Schwartz that if there's ever anything that I can do, and that's why I agreed to come speak tonight, because it is that important. And obviously you know who I am. You know my family. You know that I am who I am. You know that you wouldn't expect something like that to come from one of my family members or my children, but I'm happy to say that she is a leader. She is the JV captain of the volleyball team. She is involved in a leadership program at school. Her grades are excelled. She has a boyfriend. She is doing fantastic now, but I'm not sure that we would have gotten that far in that quick of time had it not been for the services with this program and for Officer Schwartz. So thank you for hearing me weep and sharing my story.
Thank you, Julie.
I'm happy to take any questions if that would be helpful, or
If there's any questions from anybody? No, I want to thank you. Alderman Albertini?
I do have a
Sure.
question.
of course.
If we know people outside of here, who do we direct them to the Schwartz, or is it on here?
Yes. There are a variety of ways to refer someone, but this email that's listed in the blue box, you can also call this phone number. You can reach out to Officer Schwartz as well. We take referrals from all different sources. The formal way is through that blue box on the glossy sheet, but I can tell you right now that we get referrals in all kinds of informal ways at 2 o'clock in the morning in a text message or a crisis call in the middle of the night. So we're happy to take referrals. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Is there anybody else? Alderwoman Frank?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my question would be directed to Chief Woody. Do we have any leads on the sources of where the fentanyl and the other drugs are coming from?
Mexico and China.
But somebody's bringing them to, are they coming from Chicago?
Yeah, typically the sources are going to come from Mexico. The derivatives are going to come from China. Hub is Chicago. But they've got networks throughout the United States. Individual victims of overdoses get them from various suppliers. We identify them when we can. It depends on what type of cooperations we get from the clients and or the client's family.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Alderman Fleury?
Just a comment. I just want to thank you for coming out here tonight. I know when this program was first introduced, there were some skeptics of maybe would be worth having an officer involved, and even though that the costs were completely covered. So I'm glad that you're able to speak here tonight and clear up some of those, and hopefully this would be a long support standing to keep this program going. And I've heard enough tonight and knew 2 years ago it was a good idea, but it's nice to see some hard data that obviously it'd be hard to contradict and say that we don't need this program in the community. We've seen some success, so thanks for that detailed brief.
Of course, you're welcome. I would extend an invitation to the council members too. We do have local elected officials that have joined our task force and sit on a variety of the committees. You're all more than welcome to, if you'd like to hold a leadership role on the task force, you're all welcome to participate. If you'd like to be more involved in what we're doing, we have had some county board members that have participated in the past, so you're welcome to join us. You can just email me or call me and I can get you connected to the different areas where we could, use some additional support from the task force perspective, so.
Okay. Anybody else?
I actually have a question. So I don't have as severe a story as she had, but I know from having a high school student that it's become quite the issue nowadays, especially with social media trends. You never know what kids can get into. And so I was wondering if, without having any affiliation, if there's a way to volunteer and support the program.
Yeah, I can give you my card.
Excellent.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you. I will say, when Julie had come up here and talked, I certainly appreciate that. I know that's a tough story to tell, but it is a success story as well. And you're right. A lot of times it affects, drugs, what have you, mental illness affects individuals in our families, all of our families, or our neighbors, what have you. So thank you, Julie, for that. I don't think there's any better testimonial that would be told than your honesty, and it's tough, but I appreciate it. Also, I know when I was an alderman some 8-10 years ago, one of the most frustrating, very frustrating calls that I received was from a neighbor who's a very good friend of mine, and their loved one was involved with drugs and needed help. And I was so frustrated with it because I actually cared about this person. And so I did have a conversation with the state's attorney then, and it was quite an animated conversation because there was no help to be given. And I was it was just very, very frustrating because this individual needed help. And so when Julie comes up and talks about, the family isn't necessarily the best ones to advocate or to help somebody, I seen that firsthand because they had done everything that they possibly could do, and probably as a last resort, they knew me and they called me, and even I wasn't able to get any help because there was none to be had. And very, very sad story. It didn't end well, and so this is certainly a chance to do better. I also want to thank Amanda. I know when we had talked about this program a couple years ago, when I had first come into office, it was almost, I think it was a draw, and I had some concerns about how we were going to be able to pay for it, and rightfully so. We have a lot of bills here at the city that we didn't have 2 years ago, and I want to thank you for going back and rewriting the grant and making sure that this program worked the way it was supposed to. I also want to thank Shannon Hansen. Ms. Hansen and I had talked about actually what the shortfall was and what it meant to the city, and to be able to go ahead and have that with your help to be able to make up that shortfall was a huge deal. So I'm very grateful for that. Alderwoman Frank had brought up a good question. Where does this come from? We should all be advocates. They are coming across our border, and these types of fentanyl drugs and now xylazine they're putting all of our children at risk, and it's really unacceptable. As Americans, we should be outraged. We should have the border secured. When you don't, I think you see money and you see the type of profits that come into this country, and they take advantage of our children, and it makes it very, very, very tough to deal with. So if we can advocate as well on that behalf, I think that would make the most sense too. But again, thank you so much. Appreciate it, Amanda. Appreciate it, Julie. And if there are no other questions for Amanda? Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mhm,
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving on, the agenda here, reports of officers, boards, and special committees. We have public safety unfinished business tonight. We have none. Public safety new business. Item A, 2A on the next page. We have police department update. Chief Woody.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm proud to report that Officer Korn will be recognized by Mothers Against Drunk Driving and presented with a MAD Heroes Award for his DUI enforcement over the last several years. He was submitted for this award and recognized, and ultimately he'll be a recipient of this award middle of September. So just wanted to recognize him for that. He is diligent in his DUI enforcement, keeping this community safe. But in addition to that, it's amazing what else he comes up with. Even though he may stop somebody for driving under the influence, we've learned that, people don't just drive under the influence of alcohol anymore. A lot of times it's a combination of alcohol and drugs. So he ends up finding, numerous times where he'll find narcotics and or firearms once somebody's under arrest. So we're very proud of that, and he's doing an excellent job. He's obviously not the only one on the department, but he is the only one currently being recognized by MAD. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Recruits Laura and Hauser were sworn in for the police department on August 18th. They will be attending Basic Academy at Sauk Valley for the next 16 weeks. And probationary officers Ochoa and Venegas graduated from the Suburban Law Enforcement Academy on August 18th. So we finished one swearing in and went to a graduation that very same day. So that was a great day for the command staff. Excited to, get some officers on board and get some of these spots filled, as you'll see later on in my update. Probationary officer Bendel graduated from Police Training Institute on August 24th. And probationary officers Bendel, Ochoa, and Venegas are currently in the FTO orientation phase. Probationary officer Hernandez is currently in step 2. Currently, we have a peer interview scheduled with a lateral candidate this week. The police department has a Fire and Police Commission meeting Thursday night where we'll be discussing lateral candidate performance on the peer interview and requesting permission to conduct his background. We'll also be requesting from the Fire and Police Commission to bring changes of the rules and regulations for entry-level candidates to City Council for consideration for home rule authority. And then lastly, we currently have 4 officers who are on long-term medical and 6, as I previously stated, in various stages of basic training for a total of 10 officers we're having to cover on both patrol and in the detective section. That'll complete my update. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief Woody? Okay. Moving on to item B, Fire Department update. Chief Shadle.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to report our calls over the last 30 days. Last 30 days, we've responded to 285 calls for help, or 9.5 calls per shift on average. Very happy to report no structure fires, not only in Belvedere, but also in the county over the past 30 days. We did have some minor cooking fires and outside rubbish fire. We responded to 192 EMS calls, 2 accidents with injuries, 3 elevator rescues. I'll have to look up and see if that was one elevator. 3 gas leaks, 4 carbon monoxide incidents, and 2 power lines down. Our mutual aid given and mutual aid received was very balanced this month. We gave mutual aid, our ambulance, 5 times, and we received ambulances 6 times. In the past 30 days, we've transported 166 patients to area hospitals, 16 to Javon Bay, 61 to St. Anthony's, 21 to Swedish American Rockford, and the most, of course, 68 to Swedish American in Belvedere. So we have started billing, of course, for ambulance transports. We have billed $1.1 million since May 1st. We are still setting up all the accounts. We haven't gotten the Medicare, Medicaid approval yet, and revenue to date is $7,900. On August 7th, we hired our new full-time inspector. He's been a great addition. He's been working very diligently, learning our systems, Bracer Compliance Engine, and First Due inspection software. And he's already started chipping away at the past dues and the deficient systems. Main goal, obviously, is to work through that and then start inspecting on a somewhat fairly regular basis. On August 18th, as you guys know, we in-serviced our new fire engine. I want to thank you guys for that. As you guys know, the fire engine is really the Swiss Army knife of emergency services. It has a little bit of everything on it. Some of the updates that I went over when we in-serviced it about what differences an engine has today versus 20 years ago. This engine has a lot of safety features. Performance-wise, it has the same pump as standard. That's still standard, even 20 years later, 1,500 GPM. But it also has a reinforced cab, backup cameras. It has improved braking, improved turning, better sound dampening, seatbelt monitoring systems. And it also has a black box that records seatbelt use and speed. It has improved slip-resistant materials. About once a year we have injury, someone getting on or getting off of the engine. And it has a very low supply hose bed. The heaviest hose that we carry is our supply hose that hooks to the hydrant. And it is about 4 feet lower on this new engine, so reducing the chance for back and shoulder injuries deploying that. So we're working with the Police and Fire Commission to fill a firefighter vacancy. We have 3 candidates left on our list, and we're working through the process. One has just passed the polygraph, and we're working another individual through a background, and a third individual is trying to get their CPAT, which is their agility test that they are required to get so they can do the job. Happy to report the radio grant that I brought to you guys is a county-wide grant. We have been approved to receive that grant. It's for all 4 fire departments in Boone County. It's $594,000 for 68 dual band portable radios. 14 of those are hopefully coming to the city. We have a 10% cost share, which we budgeted for in our capital. Right now, there's been a little bit of resistance from the county fire departments. Part of this grant is switching to digital radio systems, which have updated user costs, and some of the dynamics of the volunteers where they respond from home and all the members have a lot of personal radio equipment and equipment in their cars. It would make that not the primary radio type for dispatch. So there's a little bit of hesitancy for that. I think we're going to work through it. They're doing some radio tests where we might be able to duplicate our transmissions on both systems, which would be ideal, so there'd be no downfalls. So both types of radios will work. So I'll keep you guys updated on that. I have no further information for you guys, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chief Shadle? Okay. I guess you covered it, Chief. Very well, thank you. So we have item C, Fire Department intergovernmental agreement for EMS non-transport services between School District 100 and the City of Belvedere. Chief Shadle?
Thank you, sir. As you guys know, the ambulance transport services have evolved completely in Boone County. And one of the services that the school districts relied on was having a standby ambulance for high school football games. The athletic director, Josh Sternquist, reached out to me and asked me if we would be able to provide the non-emergent or non-transport emergency services to the football games using our crew members at no cost to the city, fully reimbursed for the overtime. We looked into it. We both thought it would be mutually beneficial, as our skilled and vetted providers would be the ones providing the care to our children and staff and community, and they would be able to receive these services at cost. So we came up, or Attorney Drella wrote a IGA that basically says that we'd provide those services when we can, at no fault when we cannot, and that we'd be reimbursed for the overtime costs. We'd be invoicing the school district. And we've obviously run it through our legal. Upon first reading tonight, the school district's running it through their legal. And if all goes well, we'll be providing that service at the next home football game. One thing I would want to mention, you might ask, well, don't you need an ambulance at a football game? That was my question. Too, turns out, no, when that ambulance is there, it allows them to provide those ALS services, but they actually call an ambulance when they need an ambulance because they can't play if that ambulance leaves. So I learned that, and so this would be a good match to be able to do that. I request a motion authorizing the agreement titled Intergovernmental Agreement for EMS Non-Transport Services between School District 100 and the City of Belvedere.
Okay, I have a motion by Alderman Albertini and a second. Alderman Snow, thank you. Thank you. Any questions regarding the motion on the floor? Alderwoman Gramkowski?
I have a question. Excuse me. In 7A, it says Belvedere High School, but this is both high schools?
So specifically, Josh asked for Belvedere High School. I tried to broaden, he asked specifically for football games. That's something that we might be able to edit to offer that opportunity. The Belvedere North High School is actually not in our district. It's underneath District 2. And so I don't know if the middle schools or grade schools may or may not have any needs for those services. So I could look into that, though.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Chief Shadle? All right, hearing none, we have a motion authorizing the agreement titled Intergovernmental Agreement for EMS Non-Transport Services between School District 100 and the City of Belvedere. If there are no other questions, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. If there's anybody opposed, okay, motion passed. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Finance and Personnel, unfinished business, we have none. Item 4, Finance and Personnel, new business. We have Finance Personnel, Finance Department update. Shannon Hansen. Ms. Hansen?
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 quick updates. As far as grants, we're still waiting for final review from our CDBG disaster relief application for reimbursement of expenses related to the March 31st tornado. As of August 11th, the city was the only application submitted. Review was temporarily halted due to an electrical fire and a burst pipe at the DCEO offices, but we hope to be hearing something soon. The city has also been provided with a $150,000 grant opportunity through Representative Vella for capital projects. Last week, council approved 3 separate bids for concrete work at stations 1 and 2, and we will be submitting those projects for grant fund approval. If successful, this will allow the city to reduce the total amount of capital expenses allocated this year, as well as what was anticipated next year. My other update is just to let you know, the city has a number of safeguards in place to prevent fraudulent acts. One of those safeguards was successfully put to the test in recent weeks as 2 checks totaling almost $17,000 were presented for payment. One check had been washed, which means it was an issued check that had been altered, and the other was forged as it was a check not yet in circulation. In both instances, the city was able to identify the checks as fraudulent, and funds were neither paid to the presenter nor deducted from the city's account. We filed a report with the Belvedere Police Department, and the matter is under investigation.
Okay. All right, any questions for Ms. Hanson? All right, thank you for your work, too. I think sometimes when we get money, and we have received quite a bit of goodwill from our friends at the state, but that doesn't mean that we don't have to go out and fill out the necessary paperwork and obtain it. Grants are difficult. Certainly appreciate your hard work on that. Usually they tell me that, what are you doing applying for these within a week or maybe 2 at the most. A lot of communities don't get to them maybe within a month. And we've always been able to get to them, and I appreciate that, Ms. Hanson. We deserve as much goodwill as we can get here, and I thank you for helping us get it. If there are any questions for Ms. Hanson, we'll move on here. We have item B, the City of Belvedere investment policy. Ms. Hanson?
Thank you again. The investment policy in your packet is an update of what's been in place since 2010. Other than a couple of grammatical errors, the only proposed changes are the elimination of Section 1.14 Advisory Board and an update to Attachment A. With regard to the Advisory Board, it is my understanding that while called for in the policy, there is no board in place and meetings have not occurred. The board is not a statutory requirement, and with the exception of one municipality, there are no others with a similar practice in place. Attachment A, or the listing of authorized financial institutions, aligns with the city's current investments. Many of those previously listed no longer exist due to mergers and acquisitions, or the city no longer has funds deposited with those institutions. If council has no objections, I recommend a motion to approve the revised investment policy as presented.
Okay, could I have motion by Alderman Fleury, second by Alderman McGee? Thank you, both. Any questions or comments on that motion on the floor? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And if there's any opposed? Okay, motion passed. Thank you very much for that, Ms. Hanson. And moving on, we have item 5 under other. We have Public Works, item A, excuse me. Item A, Public Works IEPA, Public Water Supply Loan Program regarding well number 11. Director Anderson.
Thank you, Your Honor. A memo in your packet. We have been advised by IEPA that Belvedere has $1.3 million in emerging contaminants principal forgiveness reserved for us in the FY 2024 allotment from IEPA. That's project number L174188. Attached to this memo is an authorizing debt ordinance required as part of the IEPA loan application process in order to receive our loan offer. Also attached is a draft of the loan offer. The ordinance authorizes $1.8 million in debt, and the final debt amount will be based on the actual cost of the completed project. So our estimated cost is that $1.3 million that's been approved already through IEPA. We put in that extra as a contingency fund because they've indicated to us through that approval process that to get a change order for an increase takes a lot of effort, time, and it's always better to ask for more upfront than what you will actually need to circumvent those issues. So that's the reason for the 1.8. Again, it'll be based on the actual final cost of the project. I would recommend approval of the debt authorization ordinance for IEPA project L174188. And then the next item on the agenda is to waive the 2-week layover for this ordinance. And the reason for that is basically to save 2 weeks' worth of time in the process, because this is our last item that we need to actually formally make that application, and for then the IEPA turn around and get it and offer us a loan agreement for signature. So again, that's 2 weeks of time saving that allow us to get out to bid faster on this part of the project.
Okay. Hearing that, if I could get a motion for the approval of the debt authorization ordinance for IEPA project number L174188. Motion by Alderman Snow, second by Alderman McGee. Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding the motion on the floor?
And just to clarify, this is only for drilling the hole in the ground. This is phase 1 of the project. Phase 2 will require another application to the state for the actual construction of the well and the pumping facilities as well. So this is only the first phase of this project.
Thank you for clarifying that, Brent. Okay, if there are no other questions for Mr. Anderson, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye. Aye. And if there's any opposed? Okay, motion passed, thank you. And item B, Director Anderson.
Again, the request, waive the 2-week layover requirement for section 287G of the City of Belvedere Municipal Code with respect to IEPA Public Water Supply Loan Program, well number 11.
Okay, thank you. For reasons stated previously, if I could have a motion to that effect, please. Motion by Alderwoman Frank, thank you. Second by Alderman Fleury, thank you. Any questions, concerns regarding that? Waiving the 2-week layover? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And if there's any opposed? Okay, motion passed, thank you. And item C, we have Belvedere Area Chamber of Commerce street closure for downtown business trick-or-treat event. So in your packet, there's a memo from our Chamber of Commerce to request temporarily close State Street from Lincoln Avenue to First Avenue, as well as Logan Avenue between State Street and Main Street. There's a map included in your information, and I would entertain a motion to that effect, please. Motion by Alderman Snows, second by Alderwoman Mulhall. Yes, thank you. And if there's any questions or comments regarding that, Alderwoman Frank?
Just clarification, from Lincoln Avenue to First Avenue, what is First Avenue?
Lincoln Avenue. First.
Street. First Street.
First, yeah.
Because that's the most convenient
Yeah.
spot to actually stop the traffic and get them to
Okay.
deter rather than stopping them at
Okay.
Logan. We would stop them at
First.
Oh, First Street, it says First Avenue.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
okay, thank you.
Okay. We're all in agreement? Alderman Fleury?
Thank you. Is this the norm, were they closed before, or is it seemed like it didn't go to Lincoln before. I mean, I'm all in support of it. I just wondering if this has been bigger, because I know the event's been growing over the years. So is this more than what's been asked before?
This is longer than what's asked before, so we have nearly doubled this event every year, and the businesses that participate as well as the community members that attend, and there were some bottlenecks that got into the layout of it in the last year. So we reacted to that feedback by asking for a little more street space in order to hold this event.
All right, thank you. Great to hear that the event is going so well and that it's gaining more popularity. That's awesome.
I think if we take into consideration that our downtown doesn't end, our downtown really goes to Lincoln Avenue, beyond it actually as well, but for certain what we would consider our downtown is expanded to Lincoln Avenue as well. So I think it makes sense. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for that, Alderwoman Frank. I know that was First Street, and here I said First Avenue. So, all right, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye. Aye. And if there's any opposed? Okay, motion passed, thank you. And thank you, Lee, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming here. We have also item D. in our packet. That is a LULAC parade, Belvedere Parade request. So I guess that this isn't, this request isn't until the event will be on September 24th, 2023. I think this, there is nobody here from LULAC. They weren't able to make it this evening. But I would say that it is a work in progress. I don't think by any means this will be the parade request that you're going to end up with. I think it's going to evolve a little bit. How that does, quite frankly, I'm not sure. So, but I guess to keep it moving forward, if I could get a request to approve that. Thank you, Alderman Snow. And a second, Alderman McGee, thank you. And when we come back, when you see this next, it will have changed a little bit, and it will be in completed form. So you could ask me some questions, and I could probably not answer them for you. So anyhow, yes, I know. Anyhow, we have that. We have a motion on the floor then to approve, at least pending, the LULAC Belvedere Parade request. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And if there's any opposed, okay, thank you. And we will clarify this before you next see it. In your packet as well, there's a new Belvedere City Council meetings for the fiscal year 23-24, and also we have a Growth Dimensions dinner that will be on September 19th. I'm curious as to, I'd like to poll at least the aldermen, perhaps not this evening, but it would be a request that if you would like to attend, if you would please let Sarah or myself know, and we can make arrangements accordingly for that. That would be great. Thank you for that. And then also, I was notified that former Alderman Andy Race had passed away on Saturday, and it's my understanding Andy was an alderman in Ward 1 on and off from the years 1975 through 2011. So that's what, 36 years at one time or another, and so I do recognize him for his service. Truth be told, Andy had probably motivated me at one time to run for city council meeting, for city council, and based upon the meetings that I had been to. So I don't know if I should thank him for that or not, or if, you know, that was a great thing or not, but anyhow, he did put in quite a few years of service, and I wanted to recognize that. So as well, before I forget, I had made a note when Mr. Williams had come before the council with the traffic concerns, the speeding concerns, and what have you. I appreciate Alderwoman Graham-Kowski working with him and working with the police department to be able to alleviate some of that, and it is still a work in progress. So thank you, Alderwoman Graham-Kowski. I appreciate it. And I think that's all we have on our agenda this evening. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please? Motion by Alderman McGee, second by Alderwoman Frank. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. For the record, we adjourned at 7:14 p.m. Thank you, everybody.